How has COVID been, by the way, actually, before we dive into anything else?
Yeah, no, it's been an eye opener. It's been a real eye opener. I remember when it first started, I was very much on the fence of it's just a cold. Everyone's blowing it out of proportion. And then I have a lot of friends because I play on the computer a lot. I have a lot of friends that live in different countries. And when they were expressing to me, yeah, my country just shut down. Yeah, people I know are in the hospital dying. I was like, weird. Okay, so it kind of puts it into perspective. But you look at America in the state it was when it first started, it was like nothing happened.
Right.
Like nothing happened. Everything was the same. Even oh my goodness, even 6 months ago, it was like nothing was going on, you know? But being in the hospital, actually cleaning COVID rooms, talking with COVID patients, and seeing how the precautions that we're taking and how much just the hospital culture has changed. It's unreal. It's been a blessing and a curse, for sure.
That's so interesting because a lot of people, like, what is your thoughts on this? A lot of people they tend to cite this statistic that it's like, I'm sure you've heard of it, that COVID is, what is it? The morbidity rate of COVID is like 0.002 or essentially 99.998 people survive.
It's the, why are we getting all in a hubbub when there's a 99% survival rate?
Right. So my question for you is how, so if you're the one, you're interacting with these patients, you're in the rooms, you're cleaning, you're talking with these people. If 99% of them survive, or 99% survives, I mean, it's only 1% don't, then what about that 99%? That's the percent that survive. How are they handling it? Is it like really traumatizing and really intense in your experience, or has it been fairly mild? What does that look like?
At first, I didn't notice any change. A lot of and I want to make this very clear. I did not go to nursing school. I am not a doctor. There are people that know about this a lot. They know a lot more about this than I do. But from what I have observed, I have known nurses that have gotten COVID and they're still at work. It's because from what I've found out, it affects people differently. It affects age range differently, completely. A lot of, say, if you and I were to get COVID, the likelihood is we would lose our sense of taste, our sense of smell, and after a couple weeks, we would be fine. But when it comes to the older generation, it's very dangerous. A lot of the people in the COVID rooms are older people. And I'm talking 70s to 90s, 90-year-olds. And it presents itself as an older generation flu in a way. It's a more deadly flu almost. So you get a lot of the younger generation that treat it as that. They're not very, they're very hand wavy about it. They follow things because it's procedure. And that's what makes it so not black and white, right? It introduces that gray aspect because you see people that got COVID and they're at work the next week. But then you see multiple patients that are in their 90s hooked up to all kinds of medical equipment, and some of them don't make it. And to bring it back to that statistic, right? My view on that changed completely.
I imagine.
From working. Because the way I thought about it was I was in that group. That it's 99% of survival rate. Why should I worry about it? But when you look at it in the terms of 7 billion people, 1% is millions and millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And we shouldn't wave that away. But it's seeing how people react to it is very interesting. It's almost like the way I think about it personally, I think of it as almost the medical Trumpism. When you saw Trump and politics really take grasp of the culture, you saw how people reacted, and you got people's perspective that you would never have thought of.
100%. Super
and
true.
Then it's the same thing with the coronavirus, because I've talked with nurses and doctors who have expressed beliefs that I would not have expected, and it's very like eye-opening, interesting. I want to hear why you think that, you know?
Yeah. Fascinating. What are some of the beliefs that you've found that are like the most fascinating?
The most fascinating beliefs would probably be the common, it's just like a flu.
Wow.
We shouldn't worry about it. Why are we taking such precaution when we don't have to worry about it?
So for you personally, you kind of went through that transition.
Absolutely.
Yes. I appreciate you sharing that, dude.
Absolutely.
Was not expecting to get into COVID talk, but I'm really glad we did.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I really want to hear some of your thoughts on religion and spirituality.
Yes.
So you and I, we've been friends for years. We've talked and we've been meaning to actually sit down and have this conversation for years. So I'm glad we're finally doing this. So what are your thoughts on, let's just start right off the bat. We met when I was like a very strong running Christian. And you and I had talked quite a bit about that back in the day.
We did.
Yeah. So let's just kind of recap for some of those listening. What are some of your thoughts on Christianity in the American culture?
Christianity. So we're going to kind of narrow it all down and focus just on Christianity.
Yeah. Just for now, I think I really want to get on a broader on spirituality. Okay. But I would love to hear your thoughts on Christianity at first, because I think that's where you and I started. And I think as my journey, because I used to be a Christian, I don't necessarily call myself or consider myself a Christian now. So as I've kind of progressed, I'll take that and we'll go through this journey together.
Perfect. Yeah. So I've had a long history with Christianity. When I was around 8 years old, my family and I moved to California. And I ended up going to a private Christian school. So I was very, I was put into it right in the center. And from that point, just going to school and also having a church in my school was very interesting. Doing the morning prayers in church and in the classroom was such, even at 8 years old, was such, I remember it so fondly. It was such a mind-blowing experience, because it was at that moment that I recognized when I got called up to do a morning prayer. Like we would go up, we would, everyone would write down their prayers, and then one child from the classroom would go up and we would read everybody's prayers. And I remember when I was reading them, it was almost like I knew I didn't believe it. Like it gave me a sense of, I don't belong here. I don't believe what they're believing in. So even at a very young age, I struggled very much with Christianity. So I went through that phase where I was a staunch atheist. I have Christopher Hitchens on my bookshelf.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
The Four Horsemen, I've got them all.
Classic.
Daniel Dennett is a huge inspiration for me as a philosopher. But I recognized when I went through that, I think it's very important for a lot of people who follow the belief of Christianity to go through that. Because I believe it either makes your faith stronger or it gets rid of it completely.
That's just my experience. Exactly.
Yeah. And it takes a real, not thoughtful person, but someone who genuinely wants to know the truth, from what I found, to really take a real look at Christianity. So my personal thoughts on Christianity in today's America is not where I want it to be.
That's an interesting statement.
Yeah. Would I say that I'm a Christian?
Yeah.
I would not.
Okay.
Would I say that I subscribe to Christian doctrine? In a way.
Interesting.
In a way.
Okay.
I believe that in the world, there are universal truths. And Christianity has some of those universal truths baked into it. Do I believe in the traditionalism of it, the doctrine literally? No, I don't. I feel as though that is a huge problem within America's Christian movement, is literalism.
The literalism. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
I follow Christianity in a very metaphorical aspect.
Are you familiar with Jordan Peterson's biblical series?
I am very much so.
I am so glad. His psychological biblical series changed my perspective dramatically, and it sounds very similar to what you're saying. Absolutely.
No, I remember when I was a big fan of Peterson, and I still kind of am to this day, more so on his religious lectures, because of the dive that he takes into stories such as like Cain and Abel.
That was the one for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so eye-opening.
Yeah.
Because he didn't just take it as this is what it says. This is it. This is what happened. Cain and Abel were real people.
Come on.
And this is what we need to believe.
Right.
He looked at it as the same way that Plato or Homer or Bertrand Russell would look at it. This way of, this is a story. This is a story that has this fundamental truth within it. And this is the way that the ancient Christians and the ancient Jewish people combined it. This is their way of telling that story. So I find myself in a weird position, you know? It's one of those, do I subscribe to the religious point of view? Yes and no, right? It's a gray area. But I think that's where my love of philosophy comes from.
I figured.
Yeah.
I absolutely figured. I so appreciate everything you just said. That actually mimics so much of my own personal story. And so I'll kind of get into that because I don't think you know, over the last couple of years what's gone down. So when we first met, I was very deep into Christianity. I went to this organization called YWAM, Youth with a Mission. Great organization, great people. It was a blast. Did like a lot of missions work with them for about 6 months. I came back, and me and a friend and I, we were going to put on this conference called and we were going to call it Living Life to the Fullest. And it was all about things that I had learned on YWAM, and we had like talked to East Auburn Baptist Church actually. And we had already mapped out a date. We were in the promoting process. Like we had spent another probably 6 months putting in 10 to 15 hours a week into this conference. And about a month before the date, we were like, we're going to do this. I kind of had that same realization that you did, where I was like, I don't believe this. And it was through that process of like going through and like doing what you're supposed to as a Christian, is what we're told we're supposed to do, that I realized I actually don't believe this, and I can't go on stage and teach 250 people this thing tell them things that I don't believe. And so I kind of stepped away from my Christianity, from my faith at that point. I decided to throw out everything. I was like, if Christianity isn't true, all religion is garbage. All spirituality is garbage. Yeah, exactly. so just threw out everything.
Yeah.
And then from that point, I realized like so much of my identity was tied into that being a Christian, into that religion. And so I went through this whole identity crisis and big spiral, all this jazz, right? And then it was in the Cain and Abel, Jordan Peterson biblical story, where he's like, when Cain killed Abel, Cain didn't just kill his brother, he killed the ideal that he was striving after. Yeah. And that's when it hit me. When I threw out religion, when I threw out Christianity and religion, I didn't just throw out Christianity and religion. I threw out the ideal that I was striving after. I threw out the universal truths. I threw out the things that were good and the things that made me who I was, because I was a better person by pursuing and actively acting in these universal truths. And so that was probably a year and a half ago. So I've been integrating those back into my life and trying to figure out, where does this all kind of fit? Which has been such a journey. And then to fast forward this way up to about last month, I went to this retreat in Utah. Actually, it's probably a couple months ago. I went to this retreat in Utah, and I had this I come from like a Christian framework, obviously. There ended up being about 20 people there. None of us knew each other beforehand. And there were some people who came from like a Mormon belief, some people from Jehovah's Witness, some people who were atheists, some people who were pagan, Hinduist, Buddhist. We had a couple people who were witches, like you name it, they were there. And we all went and had an incredibly healing and spiritual experience. Like anything that has to do with spirituality was pretty much experienced there. Yet everyone had their own framework for what was happening. In my framework, my quote unquote Christian framework, right? It was instead of like words of knowledge or whatever, it was, oh, there is this prophecy, right? But in other people, they may call it words of knowledge. Instead of Christian calling it God, other people may call it the universe or Everyone had their own framework for that same experience. And so that's where I'm at personally, where I've grown to be open to see like every religion, every spirituality seems to have some core underlying truths, some universal truths. And personally, this is going to go out on a limb here. I think that there is religion and like the universal truths taught in religion are very similar, religion to religion, right? Very, very similar. But then I think they're also similar to the ones to the principles found in psychology and science. I think Okay. Oh, your face.
Yes.
Go. Okay. Tell me something. What is it?
So for the past couple of months, I've really been hunkering down on this. And that thought exactly, right? The mix between the religious and the psychology, or the psychological aspect. And as well, I mixed in philosophy just because my love for philosophy.
I would be shocked if you didn't.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this because deep down, right? Deep down, I can admit this. Not a lot of people might be able to admit this, but I will, as someone who's gone the atheist route and done all that, and gotten to where I am today, which is not where I thought I would be.
No, I thought we'd be having a very different conversation now.
The idea of having gods, right? Something that's out there that we can't explain or that we can explain, but have a power and a force of their own, right? To the everyday Christian, those would be demons.
Sure.
That would be a god.
Yep.
That would be things like temptation, the seven deadly sins, the seven virtues.
Yep.
But if you were to speak with a professor of psychology, that would be anything with a fancy Latin name in a book. Right. And to them, it would make the most sense. Just like if someone looked at someone and goes, well, actually, that person is suffering from schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To them, makes total sense. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Look at the signs. We have this, we have documentation of all of this. Mm-hmm. And yet to ancient religious people, mm-hmm. That's not schizophrenia. That's them battling with a demon. Mm-hmm. And at first you mm-hmm. think, demon. Okay. Of course it's a demon. Right. What kind of Kool-Aid mix do you like?
That's fantastic. Right though. Yeah.
Yeah. But then mm-hmm. if you're honest with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. If you recognize there are universal truths, if you look at schizophrenia mm-hmm. in a, not a religious way mm-hmm. and not a scientific way, mm-hmm. but a spiritual way, mm-hmm. what does schizophrenia do to someone? Mm-hmm. It messes with their mind.
Yeah.
They're born with it, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's brought on, kind of like in a cancer where we all have cancer cells, but for some of us, it just doesn't activate.
Yeah.
Some of us are just more prone to schizophrenia.
Right.
So it's that idea, taking a look at that, taking mm-hmm. a look at the scientific and trying to compare it to a spiritual, seeing how because they all come from the same place. Mm-hmm. They're both just two different ways of explaining mm-hmm. the same phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, what if we all have our own gods that we battle with, right?
Okay. Yep. Literally on the edge of my seat here.
Like, I'll be a little personal, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I suffer from is mm-hmm. lust. Mm-hmm. To a Christian, mm-hmm. that would just be, I have a lustful temptation.
Right.
To a regular scientist mm-hmm. or therapist, mm-hmm. you probably just have an overly sexual mind that leads you to this. With this activity, it leads you to another one.
Right.
But they're both kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not about looking at lust as a sin mm-hmm. or just a simple wave of the hand therapist point of view, mm-hmm. but it's my own God. It's a God that I get to discuss with one-on-one. Because it's when you have that small voice in your head mm-hmm. and you do something and you question it. Well, why did I do that? Well, I recognize that I'm doing that. Well, I'd like to do it anyways. That's a battle.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're battling with a part of your consciousness. In a way,
yep,
is like battling with a God.
So with that in mind, I am going to ask the question that is probably on the minds of everyone listening here. And this is, does that make us our own gods? If we have the ability, so let's say we are in this way of wording things, we're battling with lust. So we're talking and like, that is our God that we are struggling with, that we're battling with. Does that make us a God as well?
In a way, sort of. Just because I don't know how to explain consciousness. Mm-hmm. Right now, currently, mm-hmm. I do believe that we're not just our own gods, mm-hmm. but we're part of a God, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's how I can explain consciousness in a way, mm-hmm. right? When you hear about the story in Genesis, right? And almost every religion has its creation story, mm-hmm. right?
Absolutely.
But in every single one, the beginning is God breathed into man. And when I say man, I don't mean just men. No, I mean literally. Men and women.
Yeah. I was just going through, and I've been studying Greek, some of the Greek mythologies, and that's, in theory, that's how humans were created. Exactly what you're saying. Zeus, it was Zeus and Poseidon who breathed into and created humans. The same, even if you go as far back as like Greek mythology. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do believe that we are all our own God. In a way, we'd have to agree on the term of God, and everyone's going to have their own, which is understandable.
Yeah.
To my scientific friends, I would say we are all the universe. We're all connected. Just like plants can communicate with each other. We can communicate, and that's where psychedelics can come in and all that good stuff.
So there's 2 points that I want to bring up. One, you said that we all create our own reality. Can you expound upon that? What you mean by that?
Yeah, when I say that we all create our own reality, I derived my path to that thinking because I do talk to myself a lot, almost like a madman, right? I have conversations I conversate with my own consciousness. I recognize the behaviors that I'm doing, and I try and dissect them. See why am I doing that? Can I change that? So I have to believe that by me communicating with my own consciousness, I'm in a way creating my own reality, right? I'm setting the path forward. I don't believe that we all have a destiny. I believe that we make our own choices at the end of the day. And a lot of it comes down to just responsibility and taking action. So if I am to believe that, I am therefore subscribing to the idea that everyone creates their own reality. Because if I agree to the notion that we don't create our own reality, I would have to subscribe to the idea that everything is already planned out. Right? I have no control over my reality. And if I have no control over my reality, I don't create my own reality because my reality has already been created for me. Right? So in a way, I believe that we create our reality by every little thing that we do. Right? If I decide to get up an extra 5 minutes in the morning to make that pot of coffee, that's me changing my reality, because that changes the whole day for me. Right? And in a way, it's like the butterfly effect.
Like you said, I'm going to make myself a pot of coffee. Then what does that do? That makes you hyper. It makes you more energetic. And for some people, it can make you more excited, right? That will change how you interact with people, which will change how they interact with you, which will change the course of your day. You do that over and over again, and change the course of your life. And all you did is make yourself a pot of coffee in the morning. It is. And that's just like super basic. So the other thing I wanted to ask is we're going to kind of go way back to something that you had said, and it was the idea of looking at different sides of ourselves and different impulses we have as gods. First off, very fascinating idea. I have thought a lot about this, and I have never had this conversation with anyone. And it's just been inside my head. So like, I'm so glad I'm having this chance to do this out. So what are your thoughts when it comes on like emotions, right? I know back in the day, this is going to kind of preface the question. I know a lot of scientists used to, or not scientists, but a lot of people used to say, oh, we are the emotions. We have like the god of anger, the god of passion, the god of happiness, of joy, right? That these emotions, when we act them out, it almost seems like it's less of us acting, but it's more of us being taken over by something, by this overwhelming emotion. So my question is, do you believe that emotions could be gods, like in that kind of framework?
Yeah, no, I do. I would say that, yeah, just because it's this. The reason why I would say that an emotion is almost like its own god, it's because we don't know where they come from, right?
Yeah,
we can explain them, absolutely.
Yeah,
when someone pulls out in front of me, and cuts me off, I get furious. Where did that anger come from?
Right.
Oh, well, the anger came from, I was in a hurry, or that person violated some code of ethics that we all share when we're driving.
Sure.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that that emotion came from somewhere. That emotion isn't something that should just be waved off. And I look at emotions the same way I look at consciousness, right? It's the same thing. It's a thing that appears and goes away depending on how we handle it. And it's like having a conversation with a god. Listen, I get that I'm angry right now. Let's talk to this anger. Let's talk ourselves down. Let's analyze it. Let's discuss with it.
Yeah.
And I feel as though, I'll say we're not the only ones that think this.
Yeah,
because
probably.
if you right, because if you look at a lot of Zen teachings, a lot of Buddhism, the study of like Taoism, it's that idea of we shouldn't just negate emotions. We should learn to control them. Just like we should learn to control the gods, right? The gods don't rule our life. They're just a part of our life. Now we can let them rule our life. And that's where you get people that you get the 7 deadly sins. You get gluttony, you get lust, wrath, and that's people feeding into or allowing that God to run their everyday consciousness. That's running their life. And it's the reverse as well. I mean, just because someone is extremely virtuous doesn't mean that's very good, right? Just because there's the 7, I'll use, because it's a lot of people know the Christianity terms and mythos. Yeah. You have the 7 deadly sins that I would attribute to emotions and their own personal gods. And you have the 7 virtues, right? But everything is a black and white. Everything is a yin and yang. The reason for the yin and yang symbol is there's bad and good, and there's good and bad. There's always a little bit. That's why someone said, hell is paved with good intentions, right? Yeah. So it's just about putting them in check, right? And do I believe that the emotions are gods? Yeah, I do, in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. Of course. I appreciate that. I appreciate that thought through answer. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to have this conversation with anyone yet.
Absolutely.
That is such a fascinating concept to me. As someone so I grew up and I wasn't very emotional at all as a kid. I didn't have a lot of emotion, and a lot of that stemmed from a lot of trauma that I experienced. Very traumatic childhood. I had a lot of sexual trauma that happened, and with that happening, MPD develops. DID is later called dissociative disorder, and so one thing that happens when that happens is your brain kind of splits, and so part of you remembers the emotions of a situation, other part may remember the physical, what happened. Other people remember sights, some people may have sounds or feelings, and your brain just kind of splits up into different rooms essentially. Your brain's a house and it becomes different rooms, and which is fascinating. But what I find really fascinating is the fact that I'm actually, in a couple of days, I'm going to be interviewing someone who does a lot of trauma healing for people who've gone through stuff like I've gone through. And what they teach in the program, how they walk you through it, is you do exactly what you said. You address those different parts of you, quote unquote, those different, as if they are their own entity. And it's the same thing if in psychology, if you want to talk yourself down, that's what you do. You address the different parts of you and talk yourself down. If you have had a traumatic experience in the past, you can address that traumatic experience in the past as if it's a different person and talk to it.
If I may,
please.
It's funny that you said that in the way of, if you were to talk to a therapist, they would say, let's address your problems. To a spiritual person, they would say, you need to face your demons. Right?
Come on.
So it's again, it goes back to that connection where we can't ignore the similarities, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
That is, I appreciate that. I so appreciate that. There seems to be so many similarities. One of these days, you and I are actually going to write a book on this.
I can't wait, buddy.
Yeah, no, that has to happen. So I'm going to kind of take this and go to a different direction. What are your thoughts on how do I want to word this? The spiritual situation or the spiritual culture in America today?
Yeah. I think it's becoming not more accepting. I wouldn't say accepting is the term, but I think it's evolving. And evolving in a good way. Now, when I say evolving in a good way, I strictly am talking about spirituality, not religion per se.
Sure.
I do really think that in America, at least today, religion is kind of taking a more dig your boots into the ground aspect. They're a little bit more reclusive, which is odd because you see a lot more religious sects now being more accepting towards LGBTQ. They're allowing more women to hold positions of power. They're doing more for minority communities. But in the same way, just because there is a vocal minority doesn't mean that there's a larger majority that are kind of retreating. And I feel as though the spiritual aspect of a lot of this is growing in a more positive way. I think that a lot more people, you'll notice, funny enough, side story, I was on dating sites like Tinder, Hinge, that kind of stuff, and I would always see that people would put spiritual. And I was interesting. Why spiritual? What do you mean by spiritual? Because that could mean so many things.
It could mean anything. Absolutely anything.
Like one person could mean I read the Bible and I'm a spiritual person, but I don't go to church. And another person, well, I have Aleister Crowley books and I burn candles. Like, okay, cool. Like, let's talk
Very
about
different
this.
sides. Yeah.
Yet they still fall under the same category as spiritual. So the way that spirituality in America is going right now is, I would say, for the better. Right? I think it's growing. I think it's more acceptable to now come out and say, I'm a pagan and I practice pagan traditions in a spiritual way than it would have been 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Right. And I think that's a good thing. I think when more people are spiritual in a way, and when I say spiritual, I mean understanding the importance of looking at spiritual aspects of cultures and religion in a metaphorical way, that's a good thing, right? That brings people together. People are more kind, right? Of course, there's going to be bad eggs.
Oh, for sure.
Just like in everything.
Yeah.
But I think the culture of spirituality in America today is moving in a good direction. Right? I think it's a good thing that people are becoming more spiritual.
Why do you think we're becoming more spiritual? What do you think made this change?
I think the access to knowledge. People are becoming more knowledgeable. People are not just throwing away religious teachings, right? They see that there are good aspects in religion, but they just don't subscribe to it completely. So they wouldn't call themselves religion or religious, excuse me. They would call themselves spiritual. So I think it's, for myself at least, I can't speak on broad terms because I'm not everybody.
For sure.
But for me, being a part of just meeting new people, right? I spend a lot of time on my computer. I've talked to a lot of different people. And we get into conversations like this, which I love. And you just learn that everybody just needs a way of explaining the good and bad in life. And they need more so today than I feel before, that they just need a reason to not just get up in the morning, but have maybe not a meaning, but a hidden purpose in life, right? They want to subscribe a little bit of what's called forever. I've really come to understand this, is I will always say I would never discount someone for being religious or believing in a God, right? Because at the end of the day, I wish I did, right? Of course I do.
Yeah.
That feeling of community, that feeling of being connected to something so grandiose is profound.
Yeah.
But I can't, right?
Why not? So what is the thing that stops you?
The thing that stops me is the aspect of, this is going to get a little dark. It's fine. The aspect of death.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Everybody dies, unfortunately.
Yep.
This isn't a comic book. That's the only thing we can count on. So those are listening.
Yeah.
Have fun. Live it to the fullest.
Pretty much.
Don't go the Aleister Crowley route. Just explore, okay? Just explore.
You went there.
Just explore. Don't get too crazy. Maybe don't sacrifice the goat.
Maybe.
Just metaphorically sacrifice the goat, okay?
Metaphorically is fine.
Metaphorically is fine. Literally is a different story.
Right.
No, it's the idea of we just don't know, Gabe. We just don't know. And as much as I would love to give in, and when I say give in, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. Like those who do believe have just given in.
Right.
Because I do think that it's a choice. I think it's a choice of faith. And unfortunately, from my childhood on, I have been cursed with a very negative view on faith. So because I cannot take that leap, because I know I would be lying to myself. And at the end of the day, I don't remember who said it. Who was it? I don't remember. Anyways. I don't remember the name, but they basically said that he was a Christian philosopher, spiritual teacher, who said, what do you have to lose for believing? Right? Why not believe in God? Look at all of the pros. If you do believe in God and you die, you go to heaven. You get to meet your creator. And if you don't, nothing happens. So why wouldn't you? And I struggle with that because I would love to. But at the end of the day, if there were to be a God, right? Say I die tomorrow. Say I die in this interview.
Sure.
And I come to find out there is this God. And he is sitting in a golden throne. And he brings me and talks to me. I would feel comfortable wholeheartedly standing in front of that God and saying, I understand, but I want you to know that I tried and I never lied to you. Right? Because at the end of the day, if I were a God, I would rather have someone that never lied to me than took me on blind faith. Because it's just something that I've believed since I was very young, 8 years old. That was when it began, right? When I stood up and I read the prayers in my private Christian school. When I read everybody's prayers, I knew at that moment, it's not that I didn't want to believe, it's that I couldn't. And if I'm going to spend my life looking for truths, I can't give up by lying to myself at the starting line.
I so utterly respect your honesty and your integrity, sir. That is,
appreciate that.
Yeah. Like, I mean that wholeheartedly. That is such a beautiful way to answer that question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My dude, is there anything else that you want to dive in?
Anything else I want to dive in?
I know, right?
Okay, here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
You were a Christian,
mm-hmm.
so you believed in Jesus.
Yep.
Today,
yep.
How do you view Jesus?
I had a feeling this question was coming.
Do you subscribe to the idea that he was a real person, or that he was a metaphorical ideal?
Both.
Interesting.
Both. Yeah, so I subscribe to the idea that he was a real person, because I know if you look at some of the historical, God, it's been years since I've cited this stuff off the top of my head, but if you look at the some of the historical documents, you see there is as much like outside of the Bible, right? Like, if you take the Bible, let's just say the Bible is full of crap. Totally fine with that. Throw it out. If we're looking for historical proof that someone named Jesus walked the earth at such and such a time, like, there is more historical proof that someone named Jesus walked during this time than there is proof that Caesar was alive during that time.
Okay. I've heard that. I've heard that argument.
Yeah. So, like, just from a purely historical perspective, I believe he existed. Someone named Jesus existed during that time. Do I believe everything? Because I think the question you're asking is, do I believe that everything that he did happened in reality? Is that like the underlying question?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
In a way.
It's a really hard question. I don't know. It
tells a lot about someone, though.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I don't know.
Okay.
Where I'm at right now. And I say that only because I have, in the last 6 months, I would have, if you asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said yes, historical, but also that was as far as it went. Everything else was metaphorical. And I definitely believe everything that we know in the Bible about Jesus applies metaphorically. I believe wholeheartedly, like the psychological lessons and the metaphorical lessons that you can get from studying those, and the principles that are taught, and the truths that are taught in those stories, I think overwrite the fact of whether it was physical or not. I think that's more important. I think we can learn more from the metaphor than we can if it physically happened.
I would agree with you that. I would accept that.
Yeah. The only reason why I wouldn't say 100% that, and why part of me says maybe some of it happened, is because I have been in the last 4 months or so. So I'm talking like brand new and just dipping my toes into a lot of into some like quantum mechanics and
interesting.
So
a religion in its own.
Literally, it is its whole thing. But into how you can create your reality using, like we talked about earlier, creating your own reality, right? How there are different things that we can do that will alter our reality around us. And when you look at it from a quantum level, when you look at it from a psychological level, from a neuroscientific level, and then even from a practical level, like there's things we can do to alter our reality. So it gets really complicated. Do I believe? Yeah. So that's kind of where I stand, where I know enough to know that I don't know shit. And
what a great statement. What a great statement.
That's about where I stand. Like, as an example, this blows my mind. Have you read the book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza?
I have not.
Oh, my dude. I will literally buy you this book. It is incredible. I think you'll really enjoy it. But it is so in the book, he cites this study, and it was done back in I know it's chapter 2. It's like 2.5 hours into the book. It was an Audible.
Hey, listen, don't knock Audible, because I have Audible and it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I used to listen to all my books nowadays. Yep. It's so great. But so he tells about this study done in I believe it was in the UK, and it was in the 1980s or 1990s. Okay. And they took these group of people and said, okay, we are going to give you, like, randomly give this, like, 2 groups of people a list of patients that are in the hospital, right? Okay. One group we're going to say, hey, we want you to pray for these people, right? We want you to pray that they will get better. At the other group, we're going to say, do nothing. Just look at the list. Don't bring up any emotion. Don't put any thought, intention behind it. Nothing. And so then they shuffled these up and assigned them to these people, right? Now, what happened is crazy. The group that did nothing, so the group over here, you look at those patients, they didn't pray for anyone. Nothing happened. Then they went and looked at the patients. Okay, what is their morbidity? Did they die? How did they get worse, better? Nothing changed. Then you look at the group of patients who had gotten the prayer, and it was something like an 85 or 87% of them got better, which, now that's not even the weird part. Weird part is what they didn't tell these 2 groups is this list of patients were from, these lists of patients were in a hospital as like 70 or 80 years ago, and had all already died, and all their medical records were, like, finished. The results were already done. So in theory, it's so difficult to process. In theory, what is the premise that is being said is that you can change, is that through in present intention, you can change reality of the past. That's the premise. Yeah, that's like the statement. Yeah, no, your face. Okay. That's really hard.
That's a big one.
That is a really big one. There is so much to unpack with that statement. And I know I won't do it justice, because, like I said, I'm just dipping my toes into these ideas. I'm
going to be real, Gabe.
Yeah.
I think that's a cup of coffee I don't know if I can drink.
Yeah, I understand.
That's crazy.
Yeah, literally. And so, like, I am just kind of dipping my toes into these ideas and saying, okay, I know we can change our, like, present physical reality. We know that much. And we know we can change our perception of our past reality. So we know that. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So it's very weird that you bring this up, because I don't remember what I was listening to, but it was a discussion on deja vu. Mm. And there's a theory on deja vu.
Okay.
Which, oddly enough, is actually this. The theory is deja vu is when you get a gut instinct. Mm-hmm. It goes with deja vu and a gut instinct, right? It's sure. That gut that, yeah. Ooh, I don't know about this.
Yep. Yep.
What that is, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. is our future self experiencing that act that we just did, mm-hmm. and sending it back in time to our past self, as so we don't enact that scenario. Mm. So when you get a gut instinct, mm-hmm. that's your future mm-hmm. telling you, hey, we've gone through this. Don't do this. This is bad. This is a no-no.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So it was such an odd thing that I remember, mm-hmm. but it sounds a lot like what you're explaining. It's that idea that future, we can affect the past, which in turn affects the future, because mm-hmm. it's just a cycle, right?
Yeah, right. It is, I don't know how to say it. It is out of my depth.
Yeah.
I think it's the only thing. Yeah, it's very fascinating. It's very out of my depth. And that is why for that reason and that reason alone is why I can't say that in full honesty, say that I believe the acts recorded by Jesus were purely metaphorical. I believe the lessons that we learn from the acts and from what was recorded is the metaphorical and psychological lessons are worth an insane amount. I think we learn so much just from that. Like, I don't think we need those actions to have physically happened. I don't think that needs to have physically happened.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I don't know where I stand on whether I think they did or didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's understandable. So we would take a different route in a way of believing the same thing almost.
Yeah.
Because for myself, I believe that it was metaphorical in its entirety. But I see where you're coming from, where regardless whether or not we agree or disagree, if Jesus was a real person, we still come to the same outcome.
Yeah.
As if it was or was not does not matter. It's the message that was brought upon.
Exactly.
And 100%. Yeah.
Exactly. My dude, I am not going to lie. I went into this conversation expecting such a different conversation, but I'm really glad we ended up having this one. This has been amazing. It's been a blast.
I do want to say I was extremely nervous, but I don't know why, because it's these kind of conversations that I live for. Right?
Yeah. Come on.
And I appreciate you so much for reaching out to me.
Yeah.
Because this is a blessing, my man. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, my dude.